I'm all wrong again. I got a low tolerance, cause they don't even know what the problem is. It's me. You waiting on the boy to fail, to hold your breath and face your death. Cause you play a roulette with each step. I progress, no less. Go ahead and place your bets. Cause we know who we at, we know we top tier. Cause all the hate that you bring, we know it stops here. I'm taking off like a rocket here and stopping here. It's strange how they cannot see the future but see profit here. Wait up, we gon' always win. Tell 'em I can't take no loss. My team hold no L's, no. Aiming for the top, can't make it by myself.
Let's meet Alex Pretti. Let's meet him.
You guys go on the stand right over there. Terrence Lee Randolph, March 30th, 1947, December 10th, 2024. Today we remember that freedom is not free. We have to work at it, nurture it, protect it, and even sacrifice for it. May we never forget and always remember our brothers and sisters who have served so that we may enjoy the gift of freedom. So in this moment, we remember and give thanks for their dedication and selfless service to our nation in the cause of our freedom. In this solemn hour, we render them our honor and our gratitude.
That was Alex Pretti speaking kind words, solemn words, profound words, made even so much more profound now, about a past veteran that he took care of, because Alex Pretti was a intensive care nurse at the VA hospital. And that was him speaking about a veteran that he had treated and that had passed. And in those words, he's talking about the price of freedom. He's talking about the sacrifice. Freedom isn't free. I mean, nobody knows the truth in those words better than Alex and his family now. Calm presence, mentor, kindness, patience. Those are the words used to describe this man. He was a singer, a dancer, a nurse, a bicyclist, an outdoorsman. A friend from high school said he was a helpful kind of guy. He was a confident, diligent, respectful person throughout his life. I hope that Alex's story can catalyze change as someone who believed in doing the right thing. A colleague at the hospital, Dmitry Drankonia, said he was a happy guy. When you asked him to do something, it would be done, and it would be done right. Alex was at the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic, and fearlessly during that time, he was eager to help whoever needed the help. Kindness, patience. His fellow ICU nurse, Alyssa Todd, said he was accustomed to people in crisis. He was also trained in de-escalation. Whatever conversations was being had, I cannot imagine he's someone who would have made it worse. He would have been someone who was being reasonable and thinking clearly. I can't imagine what their last dialogue was, but I will say that he's uniquely qualified to handle it with integrity and grace. Classmates heard about this. They gathered at his house. I mean, one said we just really wanted to be like him because he was a cool guy without trying. And as an adult, I realized it was because he was kind to everybody. Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, he said he was trying to channel the family's desire to tell the world who Alex Pretti was. He was a person who lived a life of generosity, someone who went to work to care for veterans, someone who was a valued coworker, someone who relished and lived in this state in a big way. Whether it was outdoor activities or being down there on the street as a First Amendment witness to what ICE was doing in his state. If we cannot all agree that smearing of an American citizen and besmirching everything they stood for and asking us not to believe what we saw, I don't know what else to tell you. Alex Pretti's family, heartbroken, angry. Susan and Michael Pretti called their son kind-hearted, a soul who cared deeply for his family and his friends, and also the American veterans for whom he cared for as an ICU nurse at the Minneapolis VA hospital. And the family denounced the Trump administration's response to the shooting. The Trump administration's response to the shooting. Within hours of the killing, Trump administration officials labeled him, their words, a would-be assassin, and asserted with absolutely no evidence that he had committed an act of domestic terrorism. Before I show you the shooting, I want you to hear from somebody who was there and hear what this gentleman had to say, and then we're going to get into the shooting in the way that we do. Listen to this gentleman first.
Have lived here for some time, just up the road for a period of time. How would you describe just the way as a Minneapolis resident that you're feeling right now?
Can I describe it not as a Minneapolis resident, but as an American citizen? Thank you. This started as a pretext about immigration and the fraud, whatever. It's well beyond that now. It's into your Second Amendment. It's into your Fourth Amendment. It's into your Sixth Amendment. This is so far beyond what people at home probably are watching going, oh, it's Minneapolis, it's woke Hoth, it doesn't affect me, whatever. It does. It's you. It's you as well now. Wake up. Please watch what's happening here. I feel like we're performing CPR on what may already be a corpse called the Constitution. And yeah, there's plenty of people online laughing at us and going, ha ha, tryhards. But I think it's worth it, and I hope you do too.
Gentleman had a way with words. Attempting CPR on the corpse that is the Constitution. White, male, U.S. citizen, carrying a gun. When he says they mean you now, when he says this is you now, this is you now. This truly is those of you whose positions have become malleable as of late. You're bending, you're stretching over, you're contorting yourself because you see this administration representing some of the core fears that you, white male American citizens who love their guns, core fears that you have told me about time and time again. Somehow you were able to get around Renee Nicole Good, right? You had no problem when the administration came out and called her a domestic terrorist. You saw the video. She looked at the officer, backed up, looked at the officer, the agent, Agent Ross, turned her wheel away from him, looked at him one more time after saying, I'm not mad at you, avoided hitting him successfully, and was murdered. Yet you blew right past it. You blew right past it. No problem. You start to hear about U.S. citizens getting tossed in vans and dumped off in Walmart parking lots. You start to hear about off-duty police, law enforcement in Minneapolis. We're talking people of color off-duty without an accent, just people of color getting guns jammed in their face and not allowed to access their identification, which will clear them as U.S. citizens. You have no problem with that. You're blowing right past it. Well, now, you Second Amendment people, the ones who said, hey, I'm a one issue guy, really? Don't come for my guns. Okay, to that crowd, you absolutely wouldn't know Alex Pretti as the First Amendment auditor, as the person who went to where ICE was performing their activities to document them to ensure people's civil rights. You wouldn't know this person, this dancer, this singer, this bicyclist. You wouldn't know anything about him as he's standing next to you in the gun range practicing his skills. At that moment, Alex Pretti is an ally to you. You don't know him as the domestic terrorist or the leftist activist that your administration has labeled him as. He's just an ally. He's a Second Amendment guy. He's a guy with a gun who wants to get good at his craft, just like me. We're going to take you through the shooting because I'm going to get deeper into this particular issue, the issue of the Second Amendment and the role it plays here, and the unusual sources of pushback this administration is receiving. We're going to get into that. But first, let's see what happened to this young 37-year-old ICU nurse at the VA hospital. What happened to him? What DHS has said is agents were on Nicollet Avenue conducting a targeted operation against another person when they encountered the man later identified as Alex Pretti. An individual approached U.S. Border Patrol officers with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. It appears the man wanted to massacre law enforcement. That is your official statement out of DHS. And we're going to hear from Christie herself. We're going to hear from all of them. What are the things Christie said? The officers attempted to disarm this individual, but the armed suspect reacted violently, fearing for his life and for the lives of his fellow officers around him. They were defensive shots. Okay, Christie. Let's give you the benefit of the doubt for a handful of seconds. You just gave your and your department's account of what happened. Okay, I heard you. Now let me see what I can see with my own eyes. Okay? Don't tell me what I saw. I'm going to look and I'm going to see it for myself. And I warn you, if we're about to see the murder of Alex Pretti, so please know this before I play this. And we're going to take a look at some key points in this. We're going to talk about it. Here's what happened.
Honestly.
Okay. Alex Pretti was on the street. When he first approached the group that was conducting this detainment of a person of interest, he originally walked up and he didn't even have his camera out. He walked up to see what was happening. And at one point he said, hey, because it was getting kind of rough. People were being mistreated. It was getting contentious. Didn't approach anybody. Didn't even have his phone in his hand, let alone his gun. No handgun. He approached once a person got pushed. He approached and he said, hey, stop that, and had his phone out at that point. Pulled his phone out, and it's very clear that you could see it's his phone. And he said, stop. Hey. They then pushed another person next to him, pulled out the pepper spray, and hosed them all down. Hosed them all down with pepper spray. He at no point had a gun in his hand. At no point. As you see that video play out, 8 officers are surrounding him. 4 are trying to subdue him. Now, at no point was he fully on his face, prone, stomach against the ground. At some points, his knee was cocked underneath him, and his elbow was cocked to the side underneath him, giving the officers more reason to brutalize him before the shooting. As we see one officer hitting him in the head with one of their cans of pepper spray, one of their mace spray cans, over and over again, hitting him in the head, kneeing him, pushing him. And because his knee and at times his elbow was cocked underneath him, they felt they had justification to continue beating until he was fully prone, which they and their pressure made impossible. Because of the way they were pushing him down on top of his knees and his elbows, he couldn't get them out from under him because there was 4 ICE agents on top of him. you see an officer, an agent, in a gray jacket approach, hands empty. He walks up to Pretti as he is still being detained and pushed down by 4 agents. He reaches over and he relieves Pretti of his handgun, which he has a permit for and had never at any point brandished. At any point. He pulls the gun out of Pretti's waistband, turns, pointing the gun at the ground, and as he turns and points the gun at the ground, that is when one agent raises up off of him, points his gun directly into Pretti's back, and fires a handful of shots, 4, 5. We got to let the corners do their job. And then more successive shots after that, 10 shots in total, all after the handgun was removed from Alex Pretti's waistband. At no point did he have that gun in his hand. Not once. When the officer, after they pepper sprayed him, they came at him. You can see it on multiple videos. He was standing with his phone. He was recording the officers pushing and pepper spraying people right next to him when an officer rushed up to him, grabbed him, and began dragging him to the ground, and was joined by 3 other officers who all began wrestling with him, and joined by another 4 standing over the melee. They clearly approached him and went to detain him. So, DHS is lying to you. DHS is lying to you. And once again, they have absolutely no problem making official statements about what happened, why the agents did what they did, and who the victim was. He approached them ready for a massacre. They feared for their lives, so they took defensive shots. He is a leftist agitator and a potential massacre murderer. They come out just moments after the shooting to declare these things with no investigation. With no investigation. Will there even be an investigation? Was there an investigation into Renee Nicole Good's killing? No, but there was one into her wife.
It's time for a quick break, then we break some more. You're listening to Brett Breaks Things. Brett Breaks Things, fighting for America one mic drop at a time.
Okay. I want to just show you this. This is what was written. This was the son of the veteran who had passed that Alex Pretti said those kind words about. That person's son spoke on social media. R.I.P. Alex. He was my dad's ICU nurse. He read my dad's final salute at the VA after he passed away. Never wanted to share this video, but his speech is very on point, as I was mentioning earlier. Also, my father's final words to me was continue to fight the good fight. He would be honored in Alex's sacrifice and ashamed of his current administration. In my dad's words, I encourage you all to continue to fight the good fight. I mean, just the words that Alex Pretti spoke at that final salute, and then followed by the ultimate sacrifice that he has made. The Homeland Security Department said the same thing they said when they shot the Venezuelan man earlier in the leg. Remember, we told you that story, brought you that story defensive. He said the episode began after a man approached Border Patrol agents with a handgun and that an agent fired defensive shots, leaving out the whole part where they went to him, pepper sprayed him, then tried to detain him, wrestled him to the ground, and then after being disarmed, was hit with 10 defensive shots. You kind of left some of that context out of there. You left some of the context out. Some other people are saying things. Well, okay, let's hear from Christy herself now. Now that we've seen the video and we saw what we saw, no matter how many attempts this administration will try to get to tell you, how many times they will tell you not to believe what you saw, you didn't hear what you heard, you didn't read what you read. We'll tell you what the truth is. All right, so we saw it. We all just saw it. What does Christy Nome have to say?
I do want to address the tragic situation that we saw in Minneapolis today that unfolded on the streets. It occurred with DHS law enforcement as they carried out their lawful duties to keep Americans safe in the threat of criminal illegal aliens in this country. At 9:05 a.m. Central Time, the Department of Homeland Security law enforcement officials and officers were conducting targeted operations in Minneapolis against an illegal alien whose criminal history included domestic assault with intentionally inflicting bodily harm, disorderly conduct, and driving without a valid license. An individual approached U.S. Border Patrol officers with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. The officers attempted to disarm this individual, but the armed suspect reacted violently. Fearing for his life and for the lives of his fellow officers around him, an agent fired defensive shots. Medics were on the scene immediately and attempted to deliver medical aid to the subject, but he was pronounced dead at the scene.
Let me stop you right there, Christy. That's enough lying out of you. That's enough lying out of you for now. They did disarm him. They didn't attempt to disarm him. They very successfully disarmed him before you murdered him. Your agents approached him. This is all documentary evidence. We have seen it. We have seen it. And you can find extended versions of the video that I showed you. You can find extended versions showing you exactly what I described to you and how it happened. Showing you the moment agents approached him while his camera was in his hand, his phone. Defensive shots. We're going to find out, hopefully, if this was lawful or not. But as far as the lie she just told at the end, what'd she say? Medical attention was on the scene immediately? Is that what she said? That's what you all just heard her say, right? Medical attention was on the scene immediately. Okay, well, before we get to the question of medical attention, don't forget we detailed to you in the story of Renee Nicole Good that it is up to officers on the scene to attempt to give medical aid in any way before any actual, emergency help arrives. Before an actual doctor gets to the scene, it is their duty to attempt to give medical aid. I want you to remember that. And I want you to remember what she just said. Medical attention got there as soon as possible. Immediately was her words. Okay, well, there was a doctor who was on the scene. He lived right there. He lived right across the street. Looks out the window, sees a scene unfolding. Goes downstairs just in time to witness Alex Pretti being murdered. So he approached the ICE agents because he is a doctor. He wanted to provide life-saving measures, treatment, possibly, hopefully, to Alex Pretti. And instead of describe to you how this played out, I'm going to give it to you in his own words. This is a witness account in court filings from this doctor. At first, the ICE agents wouldn't let me through. They repeatedly asked me for my physician's license, which I obviously didn't have. But none of the ICE agents who were near the victim were performing CPR, and I could tell the victim was in critical condition. I insisted that the agents let me assess him. Normally, I would not have been so persistent, but as a physician, I felt a professional and moral obligation to help this man, especially since none of the agents were helping him. Finally, one agent agreed to let me assess the victim. He patted me down to make sure I didn't have a weapon, and then let me approach the victim. As I approached, I saw the victim was lying on his side and was surrounded by several ICE agents. I was confused as to why the victim was on his side, because that is not standard practice when a victim has been shot. Checking for a pulse and administering CPR is standard practice. Instead of doing either of those things, the ICE agents appeared to be counting his bullet wounds. I asked the ICE agents if the victim had a pulse, and they said they did not know. I then asked the agents to make space so I could assess the victim. Now, I want to stop right there, and I want to remind you of the stories we brought you about their hiring practices. The story of that young reporter who, through no background checks, none of the medical checks, none of the courses to ensure that she knew constitutional rights or how to carry a firearm, she did none of it and was offered a job with ICE. Then we give you the story that they had this glitch, a glitch in their system. See, there was a system designed to weed out people with law enforcement experience, right? And in their applications, anybody who wrote anything with officer in it, they separated aside and labeled them as having former law enforcement experience. LEIs. These people got put in the LEI pile. Not people who were actually ex-law enforcement, people who wrote the words law enforcement in their application anywhere. Like, I work at Walmart, but I aspire to be law enforcement. They were LEIs. Okay, so you're telling me that your Department of Homeland Security is confirming a story where your computers, your algorithms, mistakenly thought thousands of your applicants had law enforcement experience. Well, that is interesting here, because people with law enforcement experience know that you have to perform CPR. They know that you lie them on their back. They know that you check for a pulse. They know that you allow aid to be administered immediately. Real ex-law enforcement agents or officers know all of these things. Fake, fraud, phony wannabes don't know these things. And when you're put in that LEI pile, when Department of Homeland Security goes ahead and assumes that you know these things, you're given much less training. How much less training? Instead of an 8-week extensive course in civil rights, firearm, and fitness and emergency aid, you take a 4-week online course just kind of checking boxes. How many of those ICE agents standing over Alex Pretti's body, they got put in that pile and they didn't get that 8-week course and they needed it? How many of them weren't actually law enforcement? How many of them actually didn't know any of this stuff? Which is more nefarious? They declined to give him proper medical attention, or they absolutely had no clue? Which is worse? I'm shouting a lot today, Scott. Dan Bovino. We've been playing a lot of this. Gregory Bovino. He's the rock star face of ICE right now. He's their golden boy. He had some things to say that we're going to hear from him today. Let's hear him talk about this.
The suspect also had 2 loaded magazines and no accessible ID. This looks like a situation where an individual wanted to do maximum damage and massacre law enforcement.
Okay. People, I'm going to say it again, people with a moral compass. People who see things with clear eyes. People who may have political leanings one way or another, but know truth and evidence, and they know how to interpret what they're seeing. Those people know that Gregory Bovino is lying. So who among us, what Americans among us are willing to repeat the lies, even though they have access to the facts? Maximum damage. That it keeps getting repeated. Noam said the same thing. Maximum damage. Okay. So, which Americans among us are willing to go out and without accessing that evidence, that video footage, reality, without having any desire to access reality and facts and evidence, how many will just go out and lie the lie? How many saw the video and know it's a lie and will go out and lie the lie? Which is worse? Which is worse? The Trump voter who is completely disinterested in reality? Forget accessing it, not interested, and lies the lie, or the ones who know the truth and lie the lie? And I'm going to tell you right now, as I progress this story, Minnesota authorities are vowing to investigate this shooting.
We'll be back to break it all down. You're listening to Brett Breaks Things. You're listening to Brett Breaks Things, pushing back, speaking up, and holding the line.
Even if there is an investigation that ultimately proves that at the time of the shooting it was legally justified, I don't think that even matters at this point, because there is so much outrage and concern around what is happening in the city.
What do you mean it doesn't matter at this point? You mean the situation on the ground is already, the impression is left?
People have had enough. This is the third shooting now in less than 3 weeks. The Minneapolis Police Department went the entire year last year recovering about 900 guns from the street, arresting hundreds and hundreds of violent offenders, and we didn't shoot anyone. And now this is the second American citizen that's been killed. It's the third shooting within 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. People have been speaking out, saying that this was going to happen again. And I think everyone is kind of waiting for folks on both sides to come together and just figure this thing out. This is not sustainable. This police department has only 600 police officers. We are stretched incredibly thin. This is taking an enormous toll trying to manage all of this chaos on top of having to be the police department for a major city. It's too much.
That is Police Chief Brian O'Hara, Police Chief of Minneapolis. It's too much. He also said, my Second Amendment people, oh, we're getting to you. But he also said that Mr. Pretti was an American citizen with no criminal record and that he had a valid firearms permit. Under Minnesota law, citizens can legally carry a handgun in public without concealment if they have a permit. That's out of their police chief, letting you know, getting out in front of it. Because when you hear the Department of Homeland Security talk about it, they talk about it in a different light. They talk about this as an agitator ready to massacre agents. They don't say, the Department of Homeland Security didn't come out and say an American citizen with a permit to carry a firearm in public was killed today by our DHS agents. No, they didn't say that. They failed to leave out some pretty relevant details about who this man was. That Mr. O'Hara here, our police chief in Minneapolis, he filled those details in for you real quick. Real quick. We went into detail. The FBI and DHS blocked local and state authorities from investigating in any way Renee Nicole Good's killing. They stiff-armed him. They blocked him. No access to evidence. And they're trying to do it again here. They're trying to do it again here. Normally, when there is an officer or agent involved shooting, let's be clear, just so we can be clear when we get into this, normally, the FBI, in coordination with the Civil Rights Division, in coordination with state and local officials, open an investigation. State and local officials, overseen by the FBI, they gather evidence. First, forensic evidence. A clean area, not contaminated. Professionally done. Then they do follow-up, witness, testimony, other things, all together. And while state and local officials with the FBI are doing that, the Criminal Rights Division of the DOJ is trying to assess if that agent violated Alex Pretti's civil rights under the color of law. That's what would normally be happening. That is how it happens every single time. Time and time again until right now. And Pam Bondi's DOJ. Now it's all different. Kash Patel's FBI, Pam Bondi's DOJ, Harmeet Dillon's Civil Rights Division. Radicalized, weaponized foot soldiers of Trump. This is the effect. Okay? Finally, some Republicans are speaking out. They were pretty quiet after Renee Nicole Good got killed, hoping that the world just kind of went along with the administration's narrative that she tried to hit or did hit Agent Ross. Maybe they'll all kind of believe it and it'll go away. Maybe that video will be damning enough to Miss Renee Nicole Good that we won't really have to comment about this much. But now they're commenting. In the wake of Alex Pretti being killed, they're commenting. Tom Tillis, Lisa Murkowski, Bill Cassidy, John Curtis, Pete Ricketts, they're all commenting. What did Tillis have to say? A full investigation is the basic standard that law enforcement and the American people expect following any officer-involved shooting. Okay, you didn't say that after Renee Nicole Good was killed. You didn't come out and say that, Tom, but you're going to say it now. Okay, you'll say it now. He added, for this specific incident that requires cooperation and transparency between federal, state, and local law enforcement, any administration official who rushes to judgment and tries to shut down an investigation before it begins are doing an incredible disservice to the nation and to President Trump's legacy. I'm telling you, if Renee Nicole Good was a Trump-supporting, NRA card-holding, red-blooded American and not some weird leftist agitator that they are trying to, uncover evidence that she is. I mean, would this be different? I mean, there is no running and hiding from this one. A white, male, U.S. citizen gun carrier with a permit in public, completely lawful. You can't run from this one. I mean, the contortions necessary to get around this one, Tillis isn't capable of them. Lisa Murkowski isn't capable of them. Although I've told you how I feel about when Lisa Murkowski comes out and says the obvious morally grounded thing and then goes and votes the opposite every single time, votes with the party line every single time after saying the right things. So I take what Lisa Murkowski says with a grain of salt, but all these guys are coming out. They're all coming out and they're saying stuff now. Here's what's going to happen right now with the Alex Pretti shooting. The Justice Department said we are not going to investigate. There's no point. They came out and they just got in front of it. Civil Rights Division is not getting involved. DOJ's not getting involved like they always do. They're not, again, like with Renee Nicole Good. What did they say? They have said in recent weeks that they only investigate police officers under the civil rights laws involving excessive force if they believe such a probe is warranted. Recent shootings by immigration officers do not require federal criminal investigations. She's talking about Renee Nicole Good, and she's talking about Alex Pretti. There it is. Instead of the DOJ and the Criminal Rights Division, the Civil Rights Division, it's going to be a Department of Homeland Security investigation internally. And it will be assisted by Kash Patel's FBI. Keep in mind, the Department of Homeland Security, they have no ability to prosecute. So what will happen is, let's really stretch your imagination here. Let's really stretch it. Let's say the Department of Homeland Security says, yeah, you know what? These agents, they may be held responsible for what happened here. They may have killed Alex Pretti in an unreasonable fashion. What they do then is, in that crazy, fanciful situation I just described, what they would do then is they would refer charges to the DOJ. How do you think that will go? First of all, we'll never hear from Kristi Noem again if that happens. We'll never hear from her again. If her Department of Homeland Security refers criminal charges for these agents to the DOJ, we'll never hear from her again. But let's say she does. What will Pam do with that? What will Harmeet Dillon do with that? What do you think they'll do with that? You know what I mean? And so this whole thing is about, right, if there was an investigation, it's about the shooting in the back of Alex Pretti. And what would come into question is, was it reasonable to shoot him in the back once that gray-jacketed agent had already disarmed him and was pointing Alex Pretti's weapon to the ground as he walked away? Because at that moment is when they began firing. Once he was disarmed, the weapon was a good 5 feet away from him, pointing to the ground and in possession of an ICE agent. That is when they fired 10 shots into the back of Alex Pretti. That is what will come under question. That's what will come under question. Let's hear Todd Blanche. Our deputy AG of the DOJ.
That city.
You're saying he wasn't protesting peacefully, and yet the video before shows him holding up a cell phone, directing traffic. The video after shows him being pummeled by these law enforcement. Everyone has now seen this video across the country with this man holding up a cell phone. And part of the outrage that people are expressing is that they feel as though the federal government is asking them to believe something that they don't see with their own 2 eyes. Is that what the administration is asking of the American people, to believe that he was violent, when the video, based on what everyone has seen so far, does not show that?
Well, first of all, I did not say he was violent. I said he was not protesting peacefully. And you just described what every American has seen, which is video shortly ahead of the incident, where he was screaming in the face of ICE. He had a phone up right to the right into ICE's face. You tell me, is that protesting peacefully? I mean, we all see the same thing. I mean, you shouldn't try to gaslight the administration about what happened. That was not a peaceful protest. And yes, what happened afterwards is tragic. It is horrible. It is heartbreaking. But make no mistake about it, that would have never happened. That would have never happened. And it doesn't happen in cities around this country every single day. But for the complete failure by the mayor and by the governor to do anything to protect their citizens. They park their officers blocks and blocks away while they just let ICE go, and they let citizens just come and do whatever they want to try to torment and to try to agitate officers doing their job.
Boy, he ran out of steam there, didn't he? He ran right out of steam. Okay. He also said in that interview, I'm very confused why the conversation is about what you're talking about instead of focusing on what really matters, which is why in one city, in one place, we have those problems. That is classic gaslighting. The reason we have these problems in Minneapolis right now is because your administration deployed 3,000 federal agents to a city of 430,000 people. That's Operation Metro Surge. And to give you a little example, Operation Midway Blitz in Chicago, 2.6 million people, only a few hundred ICE agents were involved in that. You've got 3,000 ICE agents, and they're all under orders like, don't worry about the Fourth Amendment, bash in a door if you've got an arrest warrant. Don't worry about if they have ID or a passport or a birth certificate. If our facial recognition app says take them, then you take them. That's why we have this problem. That's why. We're coming right back for an extended overtime.
They'll try to repair the narrative, but Brett Breaks Things will be back tomorrow to break it all down.
We're coming right back, I promise.
You're listening to Brett Breaks Things, pushing back, speaking up, and holding the line.
Okay. All right. So, DHS is going to investigate their own shooting. And then they're going to refer anything criminal, they're going to refer to the DOJ. Okay. Okay, because we trust you guys to do that. Don't forget, everybody's been quitting in the U.S. Attorney's Office in Minneapolis. All the prosecutors are leaving. One agent that was stationed in Minneapolis, when the shooting happened of Renee Nicole Good, he immediately opened an investigation, right? He immediately did his job. He couldn't foresee the weaponization. He couldn't foresee, the administration so quickly coming out and not giving anybody local or state any access to this, and not only not giving access, but investigating Renee Nicole Good's wife, Rebecca Good. He couldn't foresee these things. So he opened an investigation into the shooting. And hours later, a boss came around and said, you can close that. You can close that. Instead, open up an investigation on Rebecca Good. He said, I quit. I'm gone. So a bunch have quit. 6 have quit. You know that. They're all quitting. So with this new shooting, they're taking additional steps. One, Drew Evans, who's the superintendent of the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, before he even tried to approach the scene, he went and he got a search warrant for the scene. He got a search warrant from a federal judge to access the evidence and access anything investigatory. Because the FBI said no once again. He knew they were going to say no. They all did. So they went and they took steps immediately. And true to form, the FBI said no again. And the judge is like, look, you've been ordered to obey, allow them access, allow state and local officials to access the scene. They initially ignored the warrant and denied investigators to the scene. Ignored it. And Drew said by the time they did get there, by the time they did Sunday morning, by the time they were able to actually access, and they weren't stiff-armed by the FBI anymore due to this, federal warrant, they said, oh yeah, it was all done ass backwards. They completely contaminated the scene of the crime. They contaminated all of it. They trampled on it. They went and tried to track down witnesses. They took all these steps that you take after you do a more forensic-based and detailed investigation of the scene. The bullet holes, the casings, the fragments, blood, photos, taper it off, nobody in, nobody out, all of that we've seen a million times in Law & Order, none of that was done. ICE agents and FBI trampled all over it. Now, if state and local authorities are able to conduct their own investigation and they try to hold those agents accountable, this is how it will go. They will charge him or them. They will ask a judge to move it from a state court to a federal court because federally they enjoy a level of, immunity. No other way to put it. They enjoy a level of immunity at a federal level that they don't at a state level. So they will ask to have it moved to a federal court. And then a judge will decide, a federal judge will decide whether it was necessary and proper, with objectively reasonable for those officers, those agents to shoot and kill Alex Pretti. Okay, it will be up to a federal judge to decide that. All right, so I know my audience is thinking like me. You guys think like me with this stuff. So you're like, oh, wait a second, Brett. You're telling me a judge will decide? They will ask a judge to decide. Some of you know the law better than others. Some of you know it way better than me. All of you know it way better than me. So I have to go do my digging. And when I did my digging, yes, in the U.S. District Court for the District of Minnesota, one judge will be asked to move this to a federal level. One judge will be asked. And of course, you know me. Where do I go with this? Well, who will be asked to make that decision? Who could be asked? Well, one of the district court judges for the District of Minnesota. And I looked at who they were. How could this go? Because this is the ball game with this shooting. When you distill all the way down to the simple question, can these agents be tried for murder? Yes or no? Here's the whole ball game. Here's the whole ball game. They will ask a judge to make it federal. Who's the judges? Okay. Patrick Schultz, Bush. Eric Tostrand, Trump. But here's a fun thing about Eric Tostrand. Trump appointee. But just 2 days ago, Eric Tostrand, he ordered the Trump administration to not tamper with or destroy any evidence of any kind. Court order. That was granted as the local and state officials are getting a warrant to search the scene. Eric Tostrand is ruling, telling the Trump administration, you can't tamper with the scene or destroy any evidence before these local and state officials get there. Eric Tostrand did that just 2 days ago. Trump appointee. Interesting. Who else? Nancy Brazel, Trump appointee. Yeah, here we go. Here's where it turns. Catherine Menendez. Remember Catherine Menendez? She's a Biden appointee. She's the one that told DHS, Kristi Noem, and ICE, Lyons, and a couple other officials, you need to adhere to the Constitution while you're going about your ICE agency duties. No more violating rights. No more kicking in doors without a warrant. No more detaining U.S. citizens without giving them a chance to show you their ID. Stop all of it. That was Catherine Menendez. Jerry Blackwell, Biden. Jeffrey Bryan, Biden. Laura Provenzino, Biden. And now I'm reading you. I'm picking it up. I'm picking up the waves. Well, how do they decide who does it? Many of you know. For those of you who don't know, it is a randomly generated electronic assignment. Okay, the court has a system that randomly, it's an electronic system that will randomly assign one of these judges to that case to be asked and make the decision on whether to move this to a federal court. Because if they say no, we will have a trial like we did with the killers of George Floyd. And justice has a sliver of hope. One judge alone will be able to really decide whether we get a shot at justice or not. We'll see which judge that is. We'll see which one it is. Time will tell. Very soon. Very soon. It's all dependent on the speed of the state and local investigation. Because do not sit there and hold your breath waiting for the Department of Homeland Security to conduct its investigation and find that these agents could possibly have committed a crime. Do not hold your breath waiting for that. Do not hold your breath waiting for their referral to the DOJ to charge these gentlemen. Do not hold your breath for that. You got to hope that state and local officials are able to do their job, not only able to do it at all, but do it competently enough, with enough evidence, enough access to evidence to put a case together against these gentlemen. And we may see some justice for Alex Pretti. We may see some justice. We might. I'm going to get to the part I really want to get to. You got Chief O'Hara talking about U.S. citizen carrying a gun lawfully with a permit, which is his constitutional right to do so. Constitutional right. Let me give you another quote by Kristi Noem. To get into this. Asked if Pretti ever brandished his gun. She was asked that specific question. She was asked if Pretti brandished his gun, which we know the answer, right? We know the answer to that. The answer is definitively no. She said, I don't know of any peaceful protesters that show up with a gun and ammunition rather than a sign. This is a violent riot when you have someone showing up with weapons and are using them to assault law enforcement officers. Okay, we're going to really get into it now. But I want to say this. I personally do not judge anybody's religious proclivities at all. Whatever your religious leanings or proclivities are, I do not judge you. I hope you don't judge me for whatever mine may be. And I don't talk about it much, but no judgment. That being said, I feel like Kristi Noem, she should be an atheist. Because if she believes in Christianity, Jesus, the Lord, the Holy Trinity, if she believes these things, she has got to know her soul is forfeit. She has got to know that her soul, her personal soul, is forfeit. She should probably be an atheist at heart. She really should. She doesn't know of any peaceful protesters that show up with a gun and ammunition rather than a sign. Really? Really? I recall seeing multiple peaceful protesters with a lot more than a sign on J6. I remember seeing Proud Boys, One Percenters, militia groups showing up to Michigan with AR-15s in a line staring at law enforcement. I remember seeing in Virginia in 2020 a line of fully armed militia members protesting. I have seen example after example after example of right-wing activists, fully armed, daring, challenging, threatening law enforcement officials. Time and time again. And I saw a 17-year-old boy from Chicago go across state lines with an AR-15 and kill 2 people and wound another at protests in Minnesota. Kyle Rittenhouse. And you didn't call him a domestic terrorist. You didn't call him an activist, an agitator. You didn't say he was there to massacre law enforcement agents. You didn't say any of that. You called him a hero. He was acquitted and lauded and held up to be cheered. An example of our Second Amendment rights. I don't know of any peaceful protester that shows up with a gun and ammunition rather than a sign. You are absolutely an evil person, Kristi Noem. You are an evil, evil person. Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, noted amateur pugilist, he doubled down on Christie's sentiment. Of course he did. When we talk forfeit souls, when we talk just the worst of the worst, we're talking Mark Wayne Mullen out of Oklahoma. That's who we're talking about. He said a deranged individual who came in to cause massive damage with a loaded pistol, with an extra mag that was completely loaded, was shot and killed. How much more does it have to go on before the Democratic leaders there take responsibility for their words? So, he didn't say 37-year-old U.S. citizen, white male with a permit to carry his weapons. He's talking about a terrorist coming to massacre. They know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. They didn't say that when Mark and Patricia McCloskey stood on their lawn and waved their guns in the face of Black Lives Matter protesters. They didn't say anything about looking to massacre, loaded weapons, radicalite. They didn't say anything like that. Nope, those two were invited to speak at the Republican National Convention. They didn't say anything like that. So you Second Amendment guys and girls out there, you one-issue voters, my guns, my right to my guns. Where do you fall on this? This man was murdered. This white male, this white U.S. citizen male was murdered because he brought a gun legally out in public to a protest. A much smaller gun than we've seen right-wing activists bring time and time and time again. Don't tell me I wouldn't bring a gun to a situation like that. Don't tell me that. Because what this administration is saying is we don't want you good guys with guns either. Right? What separates you, the good guy with the gun, from Alex? Alex didn't threaten anybody. Alex was a First Amendment auditor. He was there to document the unconstitutional actions of ICE. He was a real American. He was a good guy with a gun. Did you hear me? A good guy with a gun. That line you give me time and time again when you justify more guns in more places. Alex was a good guy with a gun. And this administration, multiple, Trump himself, why are you bringing a gun? Trump himself said it. Why are you bringing a gun? He said it. No. He said it. Listen. Second Amendment. I don't like any shooting. I don't like it. But I don't like it when somebody goes into a protest and he's got a very powerful, fully loaded gun with 2 magazines loaded up with bullets. That doesn't play good either. He doesn't want you there. You good guys with a gun, do you have a gun with your extra magazines loaded? He doesn't want you there. Your cult leader doesn't want you there. You've got defendants. Let's see how you feel about this. There's people that are concerned. There are Second Amendment activists that are concerned about this. Some people are seeing it a little too clearly from the right. Some people are seeing it a little too clearly. You see, Bill Asaley, I want you to know this. Bill Asaley, who's an assistant U.S. attorney in California. Why is he assistant U.S. attorney? We did this story because a judge in California said you were illegally at your position as U.S. attorney in California. So he had to take a step back. He got kicked out of his position, like Alina Habba and Lindsay Halligan and Jordan Sarcone and all the people that this DOJ has implanted illegally at the U.S. Attorney's Office. So he's one of those people. So he had to take a step back. Now he's an assistant U.S. attorney. What did he say right after the shooting? You ready? He said, if you approach law enforcement with a gun, there is a high likelihood they will be legally justified in shooting you. Don't do it. Okay, so Bill Asaley jumps on the bandwagon and says, if you approach law enforcement with a gun on your hip, they can shoot you. Well, who ran out to speak to Bill Asaley on that? Who went out to give the counterpoint? Who went out to say, oh, Bill Asaley, oh, the NRA. The NRA immediately responded to Bill Asaley. In that moment, the NRA said, quote, this sentiment from the first assistant U.S. attorney for the Central District of California is dangerous and wrong. Responsible public voices should be awaiting a full investigation, not making generalizations and demonizing law-abiding citizens. All of a sudden, an epiphany. All of a sudden, clarity out of the NRA. Go figure that they took this from A to B to C, to its closure, to where this is going, to the writing on the wall. They followed the logistical trail quicker than anybody else. How about that? And why do I say they had an epiphany? You know, a changing of their heart. Things were made clear to them all of a sudden in the face of Bill Asaley's comments. Why do I say that? Because this was the NRA's comments directly after the shooting. This is directly after the shooting. Unsurprisingly, these calls to dangerously interject oneself into legitimate law enforcement activities have ended in violence, tragically resulting in injuries and fatalities. That was their statements right after Pretti was shot. What changed? I'll tell you what changed. When Alex Pretti's character began being besmirched because he had his weapon there. And then Trump officials start coming out and saying, you can't bring a gun to a protest. Anybody with a gun on their hip with multiple mags fully loaded is there for a massacre. You see the problem? See the problem for NRA with that? And they're not the only ones. The Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus, they immediately came out behind the NRA. Cautioned that an independent investigation has yet to be conducted. But it added that so far as no evidence has surfaced that Pretti intended to harm the officers. They go on. Every peaceable Minnesotan has the right to keep and bear arms, including while attending protests, acting as observers, or exercising their First Amendment rights. These rights do not disappear when someone is lawfully armed, and they must be respected and protected at all times. That's what changed. When you've got the government saying U.S. citizens with gun permits, Second Amendment loving Americans are not allowed to show up in public with their guns. That's what changed. Noam said it. Blanche said it. Bovino said it. Trump said it. They all said, you, good guy with a gun, you, we don't want you at protests. I'm going to leave you with this. I want to ask MAGA, Trump-supporting Republicans, or just simply left-hating Republicans. You Republicans that aren't in the cult, you Republicans that know just how bad Trump is, you know just how bad you're being lied to, how often you're being lied to, you know these things. And you just will not ever vote for a Democrat. I know you exist. You don't care what happens. You absolutely won't. Okay, I want to ask you guys a question. How much are you going to compromise? When is it ever going to stop? When is it ever going to stop? He compromises your bank account, your health insurance, your grocery prices, your cost of living, electricity prices, gas prices. He costs you all of that. He compromises your bank account in so many ways. The tariffs, which has been a tax on you. And by the way, a study came out and said, I think 92% of all tariff revenue was collected by who? Come on, all together. The American people. That's right. Other companies, foreign companies, other nations, China, Brazil, UK, Canada, all these people that you've been putting these tariffs on, they're not paying it. They're not paying it. The American people are paying it. How much? How much are you going to compromise? He compromises your religious tenets. I know it's a sensitive area, but I am at least familiar with Christianity to a degree. What degree? You don't need to know. It doesn't even matter. I don't want to be labeled one way or another. Don't judge me. But let's just say I'm familiar with the religious tenets of at least Christianity. I don't claim to be a Taoist or a Buddhist or a Confucianist or a Muslim or any of those. But I'm at least, relatively familiar with Christianity. Don't tell me he doesn't compromise that. Cheating on his wife, lying to you constantly, stealing, not even just from you. I mean, and forget no worshiping any other gods other than myself when they had a literal golden statue of Trump at a CPAC convention 4 years ago. He compromises all of your American ideals. Everything you Republicans feel that America should be, he compromises it all. It is as swampier as it has ever been. It is as corrupt as it has ever been. And we have our tendrils in every corner of the globe now. Imperialism is back. American imperialism is what's hot in the streets right now. Everything you want and hope America could and should be, he compromises every bit of it. He compromises your morals. Don't tell me he doesn't. Don't tell me you have no problem having your child sit down and listen to every word that comes out of his mouth when he's flipping people off, calling people piggy, admitting he goes into the back of the dressing room at a 16-year-old beauty pageant, telling a 10-year-old I'll see you in 8 years. 26 sexual escapades with porn stars and hookers, cheating on his wife 3 times, at least 3 times definitively. Sexual allegations, 34 convictions. Grab him in the pee. Demonstrably making fun of handicapped reporters. Don't tell me he doesn't offend you morally. Because if he doesn't offend you morally, you're a piece of crap. And now, along with your constitutional rights, habeas corpus, Fourth Amendment, compromising all of that, now he's gonna compromise the Second Amendment. When will enough be enough? And don't tell me this doesn't matter to you. And don't tell me that you haven't spoken about this eventuality exactly, because it's not just the Bundy Ranch, and it's not just Ruby Ridge or Waco, and all the documentaries that we've all watched and everything we know about those instances. I've talked to you personally in my life. And when I ask you about the children dying in schools to gun violence and mass shootings, the top shooting and all these shootings, when I mention this to you, you say, look, Brett, these things happen, but they're radicalized. It's all about mental health. It's all about mental health. And the conversation will get distilled down further and further. And we get down to it. And what do you always tell me? You always tell me, look, Brett, honestly, my guns are if the government tries to come and get my stuff and tries to oppress me and take away my rights and oppress my children. That's what the guns are really for. You're naive, Brett. What are you going to do when the government comes for you? What are you going to do when they shove the guns in your face? When it's down to the last stand, I'll be able to shoot back when the government comes to take what's mine. That's what you tell me. Here we are. Don't tell me the Alex Pretti shooting doesn't relate directly to you and what's important to you. This is a white, male, U.S. citizen with a gun permit in public. That's not you? You're not that good guy with a gun? I know those good guys with guns in my life, and I'm not being facetious. I know good people who carry guns in my life. I know people in my life who have guns on their hips, and if something should happen that threatens the lives of innocents, I will probably be glad that they have it there in that moment. I'm talking to you. Alex Pretti is you. Alex Pretti was a good guy with a gun. I'll be back tomorrow.